So in this video we're going to talk through some concepts to do with weather. We're going to have a think about some of the threats that weather can pose us, and we're going to look at some resources that we can use to look up the weather and aid us in our decisions. So there's loads and loads of resources out there these days for looking at weather. Some are definitely better than others. So I'm going to highlight the sources that you definitely need to have access to and definitely need to understand. And I'm going to propose a couple that I use and talk through how we use them. As I say, there's lots of other resources out there, so chat to other people. And if you find a resource that you think's good, then please share it with us, because it may be one that we've not come across before. So the one resource that you will absolutely need access to is the Met Office Aviation Briefing Service. So the easiest way to do that is to just Google it. So if you Google Met Office Aviation Briefing, it'll bring you to this page, and you can sign up to a free account. And this will give you access to several forms that we'll need to be able to look at, and we'll need to be able to understand. So these are the forms that are on your Met exams. So as you work your way through to your Met exam, you'll absolutely get a greater understanding of these and learn how to understand them in more detail. And this is the resource that you'll be expected to understand and brief the examiner on when you come to do your skills test. So really, really quite key. So we load up go onto their site, and there's a few different options we can download. So the first one I tend to look at the beginning of the day or before I fly is this one. It's the kind of the synopsis of the day. And it gives a really, really nice overview of what's going on in the UK and wider, because what's going on wider is absolutely going to impact us as well. And you can see I've picked a day to do this presentation where the weather's pretty grotty. And there's not too many tricky decisions to make whether it's fit to fly or not, but it gives me lots of things to talk about. So if I look at this at first glance, I can see I've got a series of weather fronts that are over the UK and impacting the UK. I can see I've got this low pressure system out over the Atlantic, which is really quite low at 987, and I've got this high pressure system that's sat over kind of northern Scandinavia, and we're kind of squashed in the middle of the two, which is what's causing the weather we've got today. We can see we've got some troughs sat out here in the Atlantic and down here in the Bay of Biscay, and we can see that this weather is slowly going to be working its way west, and we know that the wind rotates anti-clockwise around a low and clockwise around a high. So we can see that the wind is going to be a southerly wind just by looking at that, and we can see that the isobars aren't too tight together, so we're going to have a relatively slack wind. So just by looking at that alone, we can make some assumptions about the weather. We then look at the form 215. So this is a really key form, and the more you get used to looking at it, and the sooner you do that, the better, really. So with first glance at it, if you've never seen one before, it looks like a fairly serious report with lots and lots of information on. And there is lots of information on there. But in time and practice, you'll be able to decode this really, really quite quickly. So let's start on this left-hand side. So you can see it's broken down into different sectors. So we've got A, B, C, D, E, F's right up in that top right hand corner, and G. So we're in this sector D at Leeds Bradford. So we need to have a look at D, but actually we need to look at the sectors that we're flying to. If we're flying down to East Anglia, maybe down to Norwich, we would be interested in this sector. But also we can see the weather is slowly working its way from the west. So I want to look over here as well, because this is going to tell me what's going to be happening in the future. So we can see we've got this occluded front here, and then we've got a warm front here, and then connected to these cold fronts. So quite a complex picture, actually. If we look down below, we've got a little bit of a legend that gives us a bit of a clue to what some of these symbols mean. And then if we look on the right hand side, this is where the detail is. So at the top we can see it's a forecast below 10,000 feet. So that's of interest to us as VFR pilots. And we can see it's valid on the 19th between 0800 and 1700, and that's in January. And it says that the fronts and the zones are valid at 12 o'clock today, so lunchtime. So let's have a look at D. So I'd say the first time you look at this, and if you're not familiar with them, you'll be like, wow, what does all this mean? But actually, as I say, with a little bit of practice, we can soon decode these. So what I would do is start off with this raw information and do your best at trying to decode them. And then if there's any that you're not familiar with, then have a look on the website where you can find a decoder, or there's lots of other websites available. If you Google a TAF decoder, then they're all on there as well. But as I say, with practice, you'll soon be able to certainly interpret the common ones, and then every now and again, I'm sure there'll be one that'll appear on here that you've not seen before, and then you can look that up. So what's this telling us? It's kind of telling us the story of the day. So we're starting off with 15 kilometers with nil weather, and then lots of things associated with rain throughout the day. So we can see we've got rain with the viz widespread at 6 kilometers, with drizzle and haze, and then occasionally we've got 2,000 meters, so the visibility dropping right down, rain, drizzle, mist, isolated down to 400 meters in fog, and then widespread hill fog. So definitely not a flying day for us today. And then looking on the next column into the cloud, we can see we've got widespread, broken, overcast, altocumulus. We've got these little symbols here that we can look down here, so that tells us we've got some moderate ice in moderate turbulence between 7,000 feet. So with the numbers, we put 2 noughts on the end, and then up to XXX. So when it's XXX, that tells us that's above the level of the forecast. So this forecast up to 10,000 feet. So we can see that that's going to work its way above that. I'm not going to read my way through all of these, but you can work your way through these throughout the day. And as we get down to the bottom, you can see here we've got occasional base of 200 feet to 400 feet, and then a base of 0 feet in fog. So again, reinforcing the weather today, not being a flying day. And then that final column is our 0 degree isotherm. So absolutely another key information for us. So bobbing 2 knots on the end, we can see it's between 2,000 feet and 3,500 feet. And in the far north, between 4,000 feet and 6,000 feet. The other thing we can do, which is quite nice, is we can look up the period at different parts of the day. So this is, again, I can go back in and look up for a different time scale. So this is the fronts at 1800 on the same period. And you can see, look how that's worked its way across. And now this occluded front is now just over that southwest tip of Wales, and slowly moving in that direction. And we know that the weather in front of an occluded front can be affected by about 100 kilometers or around 60 miles, which is essentially where these where the borders are for the different sectors. So if I'm thinking ahead again, I'm going to kind of visualize that this is working its way across throughout the early evening and overnight. So that's going to be slowly working its way across with this associated weather. And the final form we're going to look at on the Met Office website is the form 214. And this gives us our wind. So we were expecting a southerly wind when we looked at that synoptic chart a few moments ago. And if we look at this, this confirms that for us. So we can see it breaks the wind down into different sectors of the UK. And we need to look up the wind where we're taking off from, where we're flying to, and where we're landing. And we can see if we just look at this middle box here, we've got the wind at 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 5,000 feet working its way up. And then we can see at 1,000 feet, we've got 160 at 10 knots. And then that's the temperature, with a temperature of +5. And then as you go up, you can see that the temperature is decreasing and the wind strength is increasing. So that's the information that's available on the Met Office website. So as I keep saying, spend some time and trying to understand that. And as ever, if you have any questions and you're not sure how to interpret them, print it out or screenshot it, bring it into the school, and one of us will happily sit down and explain it to you. So now I'm going to have a look at a couple of apps that I use and are really used, really quite commonly by other aviators. And probably the most common one is an app called Windy, or a website called Windy. So you can download a free app, or you can look at it on a web browser. And I just use the free version of it, but there is paid versions that give you some additional information. But actually, I think the free version gives me everything that I really need, so I don't feel the need to pay for it. But by all means, have a look at the premium side of things if you think that might help. So I start off, I'm confirming what I've already looked at. So I've got this synoptic chart, and it's giving me a very similar picture to what we had on the Met Office website. And I guess the name of the website, Windy, suggests that it was initially around wind, and so it defaults to this page around wind. And you can see, look, that the wind around this low is working its way anti-clockwise, and we can't quite see the high pressure because it's over here a little bit, but that would be working away clockwise. You can see it here actually just starting to work its way round, particularly down here around Budapest, where it's just starting to swing round. And you can put little markers on, and that tells us over Leeds we've got a southeasterly wind at 5 knots, and that's on the surface. So the wind in the UK backs and slacks, so it swings round and reduces as you go from that 1,000 feet down to the surface. So we can see that has confirmed that quite nicely for us. And then there's loads of different overlays, so have a play with them and see which work for you. I quite like using the weather radar, so this is an overview of the weather radar, and you can scroll along the bottom to change the timescale. And I think with the premium subscriptions, you can make that window bigger. But for the free version, it gives you an hour's worth of weather radar. And then the other one is you can overlay the rain on top of it, which is a different one, and they're all down the right hand side of the page. And once again, you can scroll through. So on the precipitation or the rain overlay, you can scroll through several days at a time. Actually, it's really quite useful and can be a really useful tool when making decisions. And then the last one that I use is the cloud-based one, which is a little helicopter. If you look at the list of different tools on the side, it comes up as a little helicopter when you click on it. And you can see here that the cloud, when I've clicked on it for here at this time here, is you can see the purple colour is 0 up to 1,000 feet in red, and then going to blue and then green. So you can see that confirms exactly what we've been looking at elsewhere, that the cloud base is really low today in across the UK, really, but particularly if we're interested in looking at Leeds. So that can be really useful to scan through the day if you think cloud base is going to be a deciding factor on whether it's safe to fly or not. And then the final thing that's absolutely essential is to look up METARs and TAFs. So I use AeroWeather, which is another real common app, and I think most people that I come across tend to use this app. But there's absolutely several different options. I do pay for the premium version of this, and I'm going to show you one reason that I do that in a moment. So again, we've got the coded or the decoded or the raw information. It gives some quite information around sunrise and sunset. It puts up important information, so you can see that the airfield is closed overnight at the moment. But in the early days, it's really easy to jump onto this decoded version, which I'm going to show you in a second. But really try to use this raw data initially and get used to all of these different codes. So that's what's going to be in your Met exam. And I think it's just a sign of professionalism, somebody who can look at these and decode them. And it gives a similar picture to what we've seen before. We can see we've got fog, and then as we work our way through the day, it's temporarily we've got rain, drizzle, mist, broken cloud at 500 feet, becoming no significant weather for a section, and then back into that rain, drizzle, broken cloud at 800 feet. So what I would do is have a go at decoding it yourself and write down what you think you can see, and then click to the decoded version, and then that will confirm whether what you think you've decoded is correct or not. And I just get into the habit. would encourage you to just look at this every day when you get up in the morning, whether you're flying or not, and just have a go at decoding them. And the more you do it, clearly the quicker you're going to get at decoding these. One thing that the premium version, which is I think really quite cheap in the grand schemes of flying. One thing that I think is really useful on the paid version is it depicts the wind over the runway. So we've got the runway at Leeds here at 3214, and you can click through periods of the day and it will tell us the wind direction and the crosswind component as well, which is, I think, is a really nice quick way of looking that up to save you having to calculate that. And the last tool I'm going to show you is something called a grommet. So there's several websites that produces grommet. I use Autorouter, which is another free website. There are some subscription add-ons that you need for filing flight plans. So you can use it for filing IFR flight plans, but not something that you need to think about too much at the moment. So sign up for a free account and then you essentially enter your route. So I'm flying from Leeds Bradford to Teesside in this example. You can pop in waypoints along the way if you're flying via various different points to get to your destination. I'm flying at 5,000 feet, so it asks for it at a flight level. So this is very much designed around IFR flying. So that's 5,000 feet if the pressure was at 1013. So look at the pressure on the day and work out what your level will be. You'll see on the next screen, actually, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference to get that perfectly accurate, but somewhere close to what you're flying. The date I'm flying, the time I'm flying, I'm going to say I'm flying at 90 knots. You can adjust the how the page layout, have a bit of a play with that, and click I'm not a robot and click request. And it'll download this grommet for you, which is essentially a cross section, which I think, I'm quite a visual person, so I find this is a really, really useful tool to help me make some decisions some days. So you can see, as I say, it's very much designed for IFR flying, so it goes all the way up to 60,000 feet. Probably don't need to worry about that too much in the Mentor. But what this is showing us, I put a route in from Leeds to Teesside, like we said, and we can see it puts the terrain in, which is really, really useful, I think. And then we can see we've got a real thick blanket of cloud and fog all the way down to the ground. So as I keep saying, definitely not a flying day today. It draws a line on for what our route is, the level that we've popped in. So it puts, that's quite useful. But as I say, you can visualize either side of that. It tells us our temperatures. Tells us our wind, so we can see we've got a southerly wind. Each of those are 10 knots at 30 knots. So we can see the 0 degree isotherm is slap right on the level that we wanted to fly at 5,000 feet. We've got a southerly wind at about 20 knots, and we can see if we were with an aeroplane capable of making this flight, then actually we could get above that and fly at this level in really, really quite clear air. But obviously the issue we'd have at the other end is being able to land at Teesside at the other end. So so have a play with that, and this is, I think, particularly useful when you come to do the navigation phase of your training. So I hope you found that video useful. And as I say, if you've got any suggestions on other apps or other websites that you think useful, I'd be really interested to hear about them. So the key ones being that Met Office website with the form 214s and 215s, and then these couple of additional resources. Clearly, some days will be a little bit more challenging around deciding whether we want to fly or not, but what we've presented today is definitely very much a non-flying day. But as I say, it's given us plenty of opportunity to discuss things that are on the chart. So thanks for listening, and happy and safe flying.